for them, you can see that, in fact, one of the engineers just sank into the chair after the presentation, and he's saying, my head is spinning with ideas now. The same guy who wanted to kick the hawker out and, clean up the place for cars, his thought process, because he's never seen these things. He's never been to Google, never been to Wikipedia, or never been to a ITDP site, doesn't know who Peñalosa is. For him, the pressure is to fix the hawker problem, the parking problem, the potholes, he's not attending smart seminars. So we have to do the homework for him. Now, till now, whatever I've said is pretty much same thing. Every city talks about this. I'm sure your cities talked about this. But what is interesting is that to convince that this is not just fantasy, what we ended up doing was this. What we figured was that you need to get rid of the transit car population from the center. It's easier said than done, because we're talking about millions of cars here. Cars up and down. So what we figured was we identified alternate routes to begin with. So we said, you know what, create mobility hubs. Call it parking lots, call it, whatever else you want. Create mobility hubs, and I'll get to the why. Why parking lots? We said, in order for you to make this alternate routes realistic, you may have to do things which may not like in the short run, flyovers and, because if I'm going to go to T Nagar, if I'm going through T Nagar, unless you provide me with a faster route to get out, I'm still continue to go through the middle of the city. These are just concepts, by the way. Okay, we were trying to push the limit, break the barrier. We said, look, feeder system. There's a thing called feeder buses, feeder shuttle. Why not take the share autos and make them feeder? Feed into your trains, there are train stations here, by the way. There are bus depots here. So we said shuttles and feeder systems, add them, let some of the very big sari shops and the jewelry shops fund the shuttles. Let the local bus company fund the feeder. Okay, so what happens now? You create, what we were trying to insist is that you create a situation where people don't have to walk more than 400 meters to get to their point, get to a point where they can climb into some form of transportation. That's the whole point. We were creating a lot of mobility hubs. It could be a park and ride, it could be a feeder system point, it could be a feeder system with the train, it could be a bus stop. Whatever it is, we actually identified, at least on a theoretical basis. We said, if you do this, you can actually make the core of this business district pedestrian. And if you don't do it, let's drop the idea. This is just pure fantasy. Unless you divert traffic around the core, you're not going to be able to do any form of pedestrianization and and so on. Anyway, more color pictures. This is early morning. That's why you don't see people on the road. A very, very early morning, taken from a bridge. We said, why not this? Cheesy graphics, I admit. This is no fancy, very cheesy graphics, okay? Cut and paste job. But he said, you can do this if you follow the other pieces. You could have, in fact, Ahmedabad in India is doing BRTS. It's pretty inspiring, very, very well done, beautiful stuff. So we just cut and paste pictures from there and said, you know what, you could do this. You don't have to have people coming in with their car. Today, for example, if you go here at 7 o'clock in the evening, you will not be able to stand there. There will be so many cars, so much pollution, so many people, so much chaos. Yeah? Anything in the world you can think of, it's there right now at 7 o'clock. So anyway, now, what is amazing is that, I still have difficulty believing this is actually a proposal today. And amazingly, it's worked out. The reason we worked out is that instead of asking the city to do it with their own departments, what we have asked them to do is put together a proposal where world-class consultants can now come in, take our concept. Because you have to exactly say where the hubs are going to be, where the feeder is going to be, what is the frequency of the feeder, etc. This today in India, actually 10th, today is the deadline for the request for proposal. It's going to be a multi-million-dollar project. And what we have asked the mayor to do is to form a task force. And since it's our idea, we're going to be part of the task force, only to make sure that the consultant who gets, highly paid consultant who's going to come and do this stuff, sticks to the original ideas of pedestrianization, bicycle paths, feeder, and so on. And it's amazing. I mean, this is actually transforming it into a project. If I had said this same presentation last year, most of you, and most of 99% of India would have said this is just pure activist fantasy. I mean, we've done this a lot of times. I mean, we talk about transforming city, it doesn't go anywhere, you know. So anyway, it's amazing. Today is the deadline for that, and we're expecting actually quite a few big guys to participate. So next year, I hope to stand here and say they've actually started digging the ground for something. You know? So that's one thing. What is another amazing news, and Susan and I have been talking about this, is that next week on 19th and 20th, Enrique Peñalosa is going to be in Chennai, meeting with the who's who of the city and, you know, giving his rah-rah speeches and so on. What is amazing is that last 1.5 years, thanks to Dave and people like him and his support and so on, we've been talking about a lot of bits and pieces of projects which didn't go anywhere at that time. What has happened is that we've laid the groundwork. When you talk about bus integration, when you talk about why not zip car hubs, why not cell phone, this was all just fantasy. We kept throwing ideas. But amazingly, today, when ITDP, 1 month ago, when ITDP came to Chennai, they had such an amazing reception because we had softened the ground to say this is possible. Now, actually, they're going to be, I would like to take the credit. I hope Susan can correct me if we're wrong. We're probably the first people to combine ITDP and Mobility Hub. I hope so. I would like to take the credit for that. So what we're basically trying to do is bring it, we're selling the concept of mobility and saying this is not fantasy, it's practical. But then getting the ITDP guys to come and say, you guys have the technology, the process, everything else we need to figure out how do you optimize the bus routes? How do you set up the back end so that it can be dynamically done? How do you, what is the revenue sharing model? Because one of the things, I don't know how it is in this city, in US, the bus guy would not share his revenue with the train guy. Train guy, all of them look at the share auto as their competitor and enemy, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of talk about common ticketing, but nobody takes the first step forward. So what we're trying to do is not only come up with ideas of common ticketing. How do you come up with common ticketing? So you should be able to get out from a train, go into a share auto, which a branded share auto, for example, get into a feeder, get into your bus, and so on. But more importantly, how do they share revenue among all these pieces? Because if you don't get that right, you're not going to get these guys to work together. So all these pieces are with organizations like ITDP. They're terrific people. They know their stuff. So we are actually going to be working with a bunch of organizations, government departments and agencies to do this, including the city planners and kind of helping them about transit-oriented development. How do you put that into practice? How do you talk about cycle master planning? How do you talk about actually pedestrianizing based on some standards and so on? Yeah, I just talked about all this. I talked about this. And just quickly, these ideas are spreading in other parts of the city. And one of the things I would like to talk about is, quickly, I'll just quickly do this. So the business group in a city called Cochin, in a beautiful state called Kerala, talked about how do you create a bus depot. That was their idea. How do you fix this bus depot? There's a huge land, huge bus depot. How do you fix it? So we figured, okay, it was basically to talk about decongesting, etc. And in most places, the politics was stopping it. What is interesting is that the bus depot was in the hands of the bus department. The land was, the expanding land was in the hands of the agriculture department. So we came up with this devious idea. Why don't we create a nice mobility hub for the bus, and we add the agriculture marketing into the hub and say, win-win situation, you know, hub for you, a hub for you, work together. And what is amazing is that people bought it. It's typically the same thing. We went through a very detailed study of it. We kind of highlighted how the bus hub, mega hub, would actually decongest the city, save on diesel, etc., etc. But at the same time, how do you improve the agriculture marketing because you're part of the agriculture hub now? And it's actually gone all the way up to the chief minister, the state level. The cabinet has approved